Hi, I'm Robin Meyer, and I'm with the East Cobb Quilters Guild, and we are here today with Bonnie Davidson, a longtime member of the Guild, in another episode, if you would, of Who We Are, a series of interviews and articles in our newsletter and on our website, designed to introduce our members to each other and to the world at large. Bonnie is a very active member of the Guild, and what drew me to talk with her today is an experience that she had some years back when she lived overseas and helped organize a quilt show. But Bonnie, let's just kick things off here by talking about how you got involved in quilting in the first place. When did you get started? How did you get started?
Okay, in the early 2000s, I went to go visit my mother, and she was always doing knitting and stuff like that and sewing. And she was doing she had these little cardboard squares that she was tracing and cutting out on fabric,
Mhm.
and she was quilting. And the fabric she had were like all different patterns. And I was wondered to myself why she wasn't picking something that went with each other, with all of them played nicely. But I understood that once I started quilting. She came to visit me in Minnesota when we were living there briefly and introduced me to quilting. And that's when I got started in 2000 and I want to say 2005.
Wow. Okay. And so what was your first quilt like?
It was a bed quilt. She actually came with some placemats she was planning on making for everybody for the following Christmas. This was January she came. And I said, "Oh, Mom, these are the colors of my house and the walls and the carpet." So I took them from her, finished making all of the things, and then went to a quilt shop, and the lady suggested how to put them together on point and then just fill in the outside.
Right.
So, yeah, so that was a horror story, but anyway.
So your mom never did get those placemats done.
No, I didn't, and I kept it. She was good.
That's a great story. That's a great story. So what kind of what is your quilting practice like today? What kinds of quilts are you interested in? What kinds of quilts do you
I
make?
normally make baby quilts. I get baby quilt orders, and
Okay.
I'll do the charity quilts. I have a bed quilt now on the frame that I've been waiting for the fabric to arrive. It was supposed to be 2-day delivery from Superior Threads, and I just got it today, and it's 7 days.
Okay. Well, things happen, I suppose.
Yeah, so that's a queen size bed quilt that I'm making for somebody.
But so you make quilts to order. You have a small
I
business,
do.
really?
I do.
Well, how
Yeah,
nice.
I really don't charge people. I sometimes charge for the supplies, but if it's family like this one I'm making, I'm absorbing the cost, which
Yeah.
is expensive these days.
It is.
This fabric. When
Yeah.
I lived over in Dubai, it was only $2.25 a yard for fabric.
Oh my goodness. Oh
And
my
it came
goodness.
from the States. Yeah.
Wow.
And all over. So
So how I know that your experience with the quilt show was in Dubai. How did you come to live in Dubai?
my husband was hired by Emirates Airlines. Shortly after we moved to Minnesota, the headhunter contacted him and asked him to interview, and he did. And he said, "No, no, I'm not really interested." We had just moved into our house, brand
Right.
new house. So, so they sweetened the deal 2 months later, and we both went out and checked out the place, and they were going to give us a villa to live in, him a car to drive, because he was going as a vice president of flight operations. So we said yes. And so he left, and then 6 months later, I followed. It took quite a while to get all the paperwork prepared for 5 dogs that I was bringing.
Oh my goodness.
I worked in animal rescue before moving to Minnesota, before starting quilting. So all mine are rescues.
Yeah, ours too. Um, so you moved from Minnesota, whose
I
climate
was
I'm
in
pretty sure
Marietta, living in Marietta,
I'm
and then
pretty
moved to
sure I have an
Minnesota.
idea about the climate in Minnesota.
Oh
And I
yeah,
think I have an idea about the climate in Dubai. It's the other end of
yeah.
the scale, right?
Oh, definitely. You walk out of your air-conditioned villa and your glasses immediately steam up. It's like 120 degrees. When it's 85 degrees there, it's so comfortable. It's great. And all the Emiratis put their kids in snowsuits. 85 degrees.
Okay, all right. And so you found a quilt shop, as all good quilters do.
I did. It's the only one it was. I don't know if there's any now, but it was the only one in Dubai and any of the 7 countries that make up the United Arab Emirates. I went to Dubai with one quilting book, and that was Ricky Tim's Convergence Quilts, because I figured I can do that. And so I went to found this quilt shop and went in, and this lady that owned it is Mala Ramakrishnan, and she and her husband started it like 10 years earlier or something like that. But there is no Arabic name for quilt. And so when they were trying to come up with a name and get permission to open it, they wanted Shankar and Mala to call it an embroidery shop, which it wasn't.
Right,
And it wasn't
right,
a blanket shop, it was
right,
quilts. So
right.
anyway,
So
so
what did they call it?
they ended up calling it classic quilts and quilting.
So they got
Yeah,
permission.
they finally got permission. It took a while, but they got permission to name it what they wanted to be named.
So were their customers primarily expats such as yourself, or were there Emirati women as well?
Well, the Emirati women would come in to buy the fabric that they would have their seamstresses make, and it was for clothing, basically. But the quilt shop itself was a lot of expats, a lot of Brits, Indians, and all over Australians.
Wow, wow. And so how did you get involved in the quilt show?
Mala told me about the guild, and so I joined. And then, like a couple months later, Shankar, her husband, he came to the guild meeting and asked for people to volunteer to be on a quilt committee. And I had never even been to one before, had no idea what I was getting into, but I figured, okay, I'll do it. So I raised my hand. And we ended up doing 3 quilt shows. The first one, and this disc does not work because it
Oh,
has all
no.
the pictures of the quilts in it, but it's a different operating system here.
Right.
And I had to show you this. This was the winning quilt. Now, this is the actual photo of the quilt, but the quilter did a huge
Wow.
wall quilt. It was intricate. She used all of the embroidered fabrics that they use on their garb, or their Indian garb, and
Wow.
it was stunning.
So
This,
that is so just to be clear for our viewers, that magazine cover is the quilt. Is part of
this is the picture that
the
she
quilt.
used, and she got permission
Oh, I
from
see. Okay.
Steve McCurry. I did have a picture of the actual quilt.
We can attend.
I threw it all away.
Well, you have moved a few times.
I downsized.
Yes.
Yeah, I had no more room for that stuff.
Right, right. Well, so tell us what kinds of things you were involved in the quilt show.
In the quilt show, I acted as the secretary because I had no idea what was going on, but I learned a lot
Mhm.
about picking the theme, picking a charity for proceeds to go to. I think that first one was autism that we picked. What else? Yeah, the rules, all that stuff.
Of entry, right?
Yeah.
And so I understand that you had something to do with quilts coming into the show as well.
Yes, they'd come in, be shipped to the shop, the quilt shop, and then I'd go and pick them up. And then I took them back to the villa, opened them up, and laid them all on my guest bed.
Wow. So you had your own private quilt show before it ever opened.
And I came up with the logo that we used.
Ah, I like it.
Hard to see, hard to see. And then also did a banner for the show, which is, you can't really see that, but anyway.
How much fun. So tell me about the other women who were involved, and men, it sounds like, who were involved in organizing the show. They were from all over?
Yes, Shankar is Indian.
Mhm.
Yeah. And he is an accountant for the sheikh. They don't say sheik, they say sheikh in Abu Dhabi. So we had to get permission from a standard company that had nothing to do with quilting or fabric to sponsor our quilt show in order to be able to have it. And we had it at an Indian restaurant, and it was great. We had like 110 quilts that first show.
Right, right. And so you also had quilters come to and give classes, instructors come and give classes.
We did. We had some pretty good instructors for that first show. Hold on. Oh, we had instructors from Australia, England, and Canada. Karen Hellaby, Karin. She says her name, Karin Hellaby. Barbara Cheney, she was a favorite of mine from England. I can't remember who else we had during that first show.
Right. And I remember later you had Libby Lehman and Ricky Timms.
We did.
Wow.
Yeah.
You were
Yeah.
on the hot
think I,
on the headliner circuit.
I think here's a picture that he ended up on the magazine
Oh
cover.
my goodness. That's great.
And I sent
Great.
you a picture of me with him at the event.
I have that. I have that. We'll be using that in the newsletter and on the website. I can guarantee that. So, well, so what was the reaction to the show? I mean, I'm sure the members of the guild were excited about it. Were you successful in getting folks from outside the guild to attend as well?
Yes, we had I think about 1,200 people attended that show. Yep, from all over. And yeah, it was successful being the first one. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it's testimony to the I don't know, just determinedness, which is not even a word, of quilters, that you would make quilts in a climate where you really don't need a quilt.
Exactly.
Only if you turn the air conditioning down too far do you need a quilt. So I think I think it's testimony to the fact that quilting is not it's not a necessity. It's a work of art. Even if you do put it on the bed, it's still a work of art.
Yep. We had a lot of good quilters. We had Janine Ibnani from Abu Dhabi. She's put out several books. I bought some, and she was giving classes too, but she's a phenomenal quilter. She was part of our group too.
So are you still in touch with any of the folks from?
You know what? I am in touch with a couple, and only because I had a maid, and she was from Sri Lanka, and I had her for about a year and a half before I moved back to the States in 2010. And so I had to find a nice family to take her on. The people in Emirates, they don't pay their maids very much. They earn like $100 worth a month. That's it. And a lot of that money they send back to their family from the country they're in. So we gave our maid $500 a month. We paid for her wedding. We paid for her wedding reception. But you are responsible too for paying your maid's medical bills and all that.
So that's how you came to keep up with some of the other quilters that you met. Yeah. Well, that's great.
And then one who lived in Griffin would come and visit me, and we would, hang out together and do stuff. Because I was also a member of the American Women's Association. So from there, I took golf lessons and bowling. We went, all the good stuff.
Right. Well, cool beans. So you moved back to the States in 2010. Back to this area?
Yes, kind of. I had been back and forth because my mother, who lived in New Jersey, had a whole bunch of health issues and knee replacement, hip replacement, stents, and all that. So I would always go back. So it seemed like I wasn't I needed to be around her.
Mhm.
And my husband said, okay, he's kind of had enough too. He was ready to go back. So he bought a condo in Florida, sight unseen. And it was located, you turned on, you flushed the toilets, you went to brush your teeth, and all you could smell is sulfur.
Mhm.
I don't know if you've ever smelled that, but that
Yes.
was awful.
Yes.
Awful. Yeah. So anyway, so we stayed there one night and then we drove to Atlanta and Marietta and ended up buying a house in Ackworth. So
Well, cool beans. I'm glad it worked out that way.
yeah.
Cool beans. So what brought you to the East Cobb Quilters Guild?
Well, I joined the Alatoona Quilters Guild with my mother. And then I met Melinda Fulkerson there. She was president at the time, I believe she was
Mhm.
president. But she was talking up the East Cobb Quilters Guild and said, if you join, you get to enter your quilts for free, you know? So
And
that was
you were just
fun.
off this quilt show experience, so you were ready to go for that.
Right, right.
And so when you first joined the guild, what was your impression?
East Cobb is huge. I kind of gravitated toward people that tended to sit by themselves because I felt like an outsider, you
Mhm.
know. So, but it was good. It was big and
Yeah.
just
So how did you, I know that you've held some offices and chaired some committees. How did you come to get involved?
volunteered.
The
I was
hand went up again?
secretary for three presidents, and then I did the refreshments
Right.
with Dan Cunningham for a couple of years. So, but now that I'm living on the south side of town, you know, I don't go every month to the meetings. It's hard for me to join in even classes.
Right. Right. I understand that. So what's your advice to new members and to new quilters?
Join a bee. Our bee meets regularly once a month, and we don't always quilt, or sometimes we'll do pillowcases for the charity or placemats, or we'll make quilts. Sometimes we learn new methods of doing things, and I'll make a quilt. Um, but yeah, join a bee. Even if you just go out for lunch once a month, that's
Right.
great.
So it sounds to me like you value the social side of the guild equally to the quilting side of the guild.
I feel like I've gotten some really close friends.
Yeah. Yeah. I think most of us feel that way. I really do. It's been it's certainly been that way for me. I mean, I was attracted by the quilt show as well. That was the dangling carrot that got me in
Mm.
there the first time. And yeah, it is a big room and it takes a little while to find your friends and
Yeah.
find your pod. But once you do,
Yeah.
it's a great bunch of people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I have really enjoyed talking to you and learning more about how we came to be having this conversation about quilting on both sides of the Atlantic Ocean, from Minnesota to Dubai. Never imagined we had anybody in the guild with these kinds of experiences. So thank you so much for talking to
You're
us.
so welcome. Thank you very much.